Hola a todos! Today I want to give you a few tips of how you can start a new project that maybe is something new, something big, something you don't feel very comfortable with and you're struggling with getting it going. So to illustrate it a little bit, I've been teaching a long time at the university, and I was advising lots of students for their bachelor's and master's thesis. And especially for the bachelor's thesis, when it was something new, something the students had never done before, I saw lots of students struggle with, getting into the flow of just doing something. And those problems had never anything to do with intelligence. So I had very, very clever students, and they were often actually the most successful students. Those that were succeeding in every exam, they had full points everywhere. Those were often the ones that struggled most with their bachelor's thesis. Because it was new, it was not really clear what to do. For normal homework, it was absolutely clear what you had to do. For a thesis, it's not quite. It's a longer thing. You know kind of the result, a printed document with some kind of research in there. But how do you get there? What do you do? And especially, how do you start? Because once you've started, it kind of evolves. Sometimes you get stuck in between, and the same tips apply for those situations. But this first step, I think, is often very important. It's definitely important for me when I have a huge task in front of me and no idea where to start, and you don't even like to start because it's so unfamiliar. So really concentrate of doing something, of getting it going. And here are my tips. So the first thing is to take your time. Sounds trivial, but actually nowadays we're used to measuring work, even in being productive, in doing something. And just sitting back and to think is not considered usually really work, but it is. To understand the task and to understand what you have to do, to understand the context, the difficulties, everything, it does take time. And this is valuable time, and it is work. It is important to do. So really make it clear to yourselves that sitting down and thinking about something and figuring out what to do is a necessary step on this way. It is work, and it has to be done, and it will take time. So make sure that your expectations are right, because we're often like, I need to do something, but what? Figuring out what to do is a step in itself, and it takes time. So give yourself that time. Another trick is to talk about your struggles. And this does not have to be an expert in the field. Of course, it can be something, if it's your thesis, somebody else who maybe has just done their thesis, they will tell you they've been struggling as well. That's promised. And maybe they can give you some tips. But you can even talk to your grandparents. So they don't even have to fully understand what you're saying. It's just that when you talk, it helps you thinking. So when you talk something through, you have to think more clearly about it because you want to explain it to somebody. And that often forces you to be a bit more specific about what your problem is exactly. So why can't you start? What is unclear? What is difficult? And that helps really just to talk about it. And maybe the most important thing is to do something, to give it a try, to just start somehow. You don't have to have a perfect plan. You don't have to know exactly how each step needs to be performed. This is not necessary and not even helpful in the long run. I mean, for the first step it is, but what comes after comes after. You don't have to understand the full process. You just have to start somehow, and it never has to be perfect. It just has to be done. And even if your first trial is completely off, it's the completely wrong direction, that doesn't matter, because you still learn something from it. First of all, you know one way of how not to do it. And second, you learn a lot about the task. It's a completely different thing to read about something or to think about it or to really work on it. You will find the problems when you work on it, and the real problems, the ones you really should be concerned about. Because we often are also concerned about things that are not actually that important when it really comes to doing the work. So you will figure out the real issues that you have to think about, and yeah, if it's wrong, then you do it again. That's not a thing. And it's often a misunderstanding. Most people think that we think with our brain. This is wrong. We think with our hands. This is our thinking material. And this is really how we solve problems. Do it, you'll see the result, you get a feeling of how it works. And this is really so important. And then you can, of course, in some way iterate. There's no particular order of how to do that. But you try something, you get back to think about it, you can talk about it. When you've tried something, you have also something to show. So if your task is maybe to write some kind of text, a longer text, write it down somehow. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to sound great. Just do it. And then you can give it to others. And maybe it's not that bad after all. Or maybe it is, but at least you can analyze what is bad about it, and then you can change it. That's so much easier than sitting down and trying to figure it out perfectly from the start. And this is also why I think that especially very good students often have trouble starting on their bachelor's thesis, because they are not used to doing anything wrong. They always get full points in everything. They always get praise for everything they do. And now suddenly they're in a situation where they basically have to do something wrong to figure out how to do it right. And that is very unfamiliar and can be really scary. And you can even skip the talk about point if you like. You can just try it and not show to anybody. And it's okay. It's your private affair. You don't have to show it. Just if you feel comfortable to show it to somebody, you can do it, but you don't have to use that tool, of course. But definitely start on something. That is very, very important. And there's another situation. So we've talked about, okay, you have this project, you have to do it, you have to know where to start. There's a situation where people are actually not even aware that they should think about the first step. And this is when larger projects are set up. Again, something that I have from my university career. When you want to do research, most of the time you need money. So you will write a proposal to some agency that at the end can hopefully give you that money. And in those proposals, the agency gives you a certain structure of what to put in. And most of the time, they want you to provide a Gantt chart, which is a diagram of the time that you think. So you have to specify the steps that you think need to be taken and the time, how long it will take and when you intend to do that. And these diagrams are always wrong. I mean, I've never seen any project that works exactly along this plan. That's absolutely impossible. And when I was reviewing such proposals, I always thought, well, you tell me about these wonderful things that will be true after those 3 years that you will have researched, and there are these very rough steps, often very generic. Get the literature and in computer science implement something, do an experiment on it. I mean, what else do you do? But I was always thinking like, okay, let's suppose you get your PhD student. This is a common thing to ask for payment of a PhD student. Let's say you get this PhD student. What is that person going to do in their, let's say, first month? And this is the thing that I never got out of those proposals. It was always long term. This is the big question we have. But what would be the very, very first step to do it? What would be the first experiment? After that, you don't know what this experiment will result in, so you cannot really plan through the whole project. But you can think about the first experiment because there's no uncertainty about it. Let's say you were allowed to start on this project tomorrow. How would you do that? And this is something that is often not specified, and this is the reason why I think many projects in companies fail, and also why research projects usually don't bring the result that are written in those proposals. Whichever situation you're in, if you're maybe starting a big new project for yourself or in an organization, or if the project is planned and you're the one who has to deal with it, think about specifically this first step. And the same is true when you're stuck in between. Sometimes we have gone a certain way and then we don't know how to continue. You can use exactly the same tricks. And really trust the process and trust yourself. It is incredible how much you can achieve by taking the time, not pressuring yourself, trying things and see how it gets. It's really amazing how much you can achieve by focusing on a specific step, on really doing something. So I hope this helps you a bit to get this step going and to get bigger projects started. And I hope I see you next time. Hasta luego.